Non-recording it.
Good morning, members, officers and viewers. Welcome to the Overview of Scrutiny Committee meeting. It is being conducted as a hybrid meeting in accordance with remote meeting protocols and the Council standing orders to ensure that we continue to take democratic decisions in an open and transparent manner. For those attending remotely, I would remind you that this meeting is being streamed live to the public. So can I remind you to switch on your camera and microphone when not speaking to the meeting to help improve the quality of the recording. Can I ask remote members to switch on their chat functions and use this when they wish to speak? Please do not speak until I invite you, and remember to switch on your camera and mic. As this is a relatively small meeting, online voting may be required together with a vote of the members present in the chamber. So before I declare a vote, I will ensure all members' votes are collated. As well as being broadcast, a live recording of this meeting will be uploaded to the Council website for public viewing and training within the Council. A Welsh translation of the meetings can be provided upon request. Right, do we have any apologies, please?
Yes, we've got apologies from Councillor Albright.
Okay, no other apologies?
At the moment, Chair, I think the leader is on route.
Okay, thank you. Declarations of interest at this point? No declarations of interest, thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting, page 3 to 10. For accuracy, please.
Chair, again on the front page, and I am very concerned that for the fourth time now I've asked that when we're talking previously about fortnightly meetings with the police, I suggested to improve integration that members of the white community should be in attendance, and 4 times that has been changed to an inaccurate record, and it's been changed to should include other members of the community, which is completely inaccurate, and I would like it put on record that it was specific reference to members of the white community, and I'm hoping this time it'll be amended.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Adams. Okay, Samantha.
Again, I can certainly raise it again.
So can we have a clarification of who it needs to be raised with?
Well,
Because it's a fundamental inaccurate statement. So who does it need to be raised with?
well, all minutes are checked through anyway. They're not supposed to be verbatim records. They're just sort of supposed to capture the salient points as we discussed in the pre-meeting. It is captured verbatim on the recording, which the public have access to, and an update on the community groups is being chased to be shared with committees. We will have that answer for you.
Well, no, I'm sorry, I need some clarification because 4 times I asked for it to be put on the record. It's a completely different point to other members of the community. And this point goes back for over a year. It was raised at the previous one, and Councillor Mintad raised similar concerns. The term white was used in that. I'm not talking about other members. I'm talking about members of the white community, which is totally different from what it keeps being reported at as members, other members of the community. It's just a totally different point. So perhaps we could have some clarification who needs to amend these minutes to ensure that that is an accurate statement.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. I'm going to suggest that as this is a nuanced topic in the fucking law, it's sent to the Chief Executive for a determination. Are you content with that?
Well, I'll be content, providing it's an accurate statement of what I said. I said 4 times now, and if it keeps getting changed in the minutes, then it can't be right because this is not what I said. And it's an important point because it came back from the previous year, which was raised, and it's in the minutes then, and we're moving forward, and it's a totally different point to say on members of the community.
Thank you for your offer to respond at this point, but I don't think it's necessary. And I suggest again that we send this to the chief executive and we get a point from there. Okay, we've already discussed at other meetings what a minute should contain and whether names should be given to the members who raise them. And again, we've suggested that that will goes to the legal officer for his determination on how all committee minutes should be written, and we should have consistency across all the scrutiny committees. Okay, you satisfied with that?
Yeah, and I think it'd also be helpful, Chair, if the chairs of the scrutiny committee met, because you haven't met since the elections in May, and I think it's important you meet and talk with the other chairs of scrutiny committees. So
I'm content to meet with the other committee chairs. I obviously can't speak for them, but we'll ask Leanne to see if she can facilitate a meeting along the lines suggested.
I'm sure they'll be happy to meet with you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other points to the minutes?
Councillor James, Chair.
Councillor James, thank you.
Hi, thank you. I'd just like to point out that in the minutes of the 29th, I'm listed as giving apologies and attending. I did give proactive apologies because I thought I might miss part of the meeting. I'm not sure if it needs to be one or the other, because obviously I was there, and I'm not sure also how that affects my attendance record. Am I listed as both being at the meeting and not being at the meeting on the same?
We'll check that with them, but there's a typo on the first page of the minutes, and we're looking at the 30th of September minutes at the moment. Okay, but the point you raised, we will ensure is correct.
Well, okay then. I did send apologies for the 30th, and I did not attend then, so that needs to be rectified.
Thank you. Any other points from the minutes?
Chair, is the date correct? It says 29th of July.
Yeah, I just pointed out we've got a typo on that. This is the 30th September minutes. Okay.
Sorry, I'm looking at the minutes, and I think I think this whole set of minutes is actually the 29th, because I'm seeing points in this that I made and I wasn't there on the 30th. So these are the minutes of the 29th. It's not a typo. It looks like perhaps someone has changed the file name, but not actually the report.
Okay. Pending checking that, then we'll come back to these minutes at the next overview and scrutiny committee meeting. That's okay with everyone?
Chair, I mean, it's another valid point about when we don't use names. We're not making reference to what individuals said. Understandable when you're talking about recommendations the committee make, but individual comments, which does raise another point of accuracy or clarification. When we had the Council for Pavilion, and Reece perhaps can clarify this, which was talking about the museum. It says whether a committee member needed to declare an interest due to working for the museum. The response was it stated only when voting on the matter did they need to declare an interest. I thought the advice was to declare an interest if it came to a decision-making process, that then they'd have to declare an interest and leave the room. Was that correct?
You'd have to declare an interest. So what I said at the time, obviously from a scrutiny point of view, you would make a recommendation at that point. So that wasn't an issue, but though she did raise it, that she did have an interest. When it goes to council for a decision, she would have to declare an interest. Yeah.
So perhaps, again, we could mention the name in the minutes, because otherwise it just says a committee member, which doesn't make any sense.
Again, we've asked for clarification on this, and we ask it of the Chief Legal Officer. Excuse me. Okay. The minutes will be agreed at the next meeting, if appropriate. So can we move on to the draft annual corporate wellbeing and self-assessment reports 2021-22. Lena, how you and your office going to present this report?
Good morning, Chair. Thank you very much for inviting us along today. If you're content with this, Chair, I'll provide an introduction to the report, and then maybe if colleagues would like to take it section by section. In terms of queries, we're all here and all available to respond to any queries our colleagues may have.
And would you prefer questions after your section or wait until the end?
I'll just make an introduction, and then maybe if we go through it section by section before, and then perhaps if colleagues have got any further questions, we could take those towards the end. If that's all right with you, Chair.
Is that okay to the committee?
Well, I think we agreed in the previous Chair that they'd go through the presentations and we'd ask questions at the end.
Yeah.
That's what we agreed.
Yeah. By the same token, we are in open committee now, and we're making our decisions in open committee rather than in a pre-meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, then you leave that.
Thank you very much for that, Chair, and good morning, colleagues. I'm delighted to be here today to present to you the 5th Corporate Annual Report on Newport City Council's progress against our Corporate Plan 2017 to 22. Now, colleagues, the purpose of this report is to reflect and self-assess the achievements that the Council made in 2021-22 and consider where we can improve our performance going forwards. We also take a look forward to the new 5-year corporate plan that will be presented to Cabinet and Council next month. This is the first year which Newport City Council has had to self-assess its governance and performance arrangements under the Local Government and Elections Wales Act. The members of the committee will note in the report we have included more oversight of our governance and performance arrangements, along with an action plan detailing further priorities for continuous improvement. As your leader of the council, I welcome this opportunity to present this report with the Chief Executive and her executive team, and ask this committee to provide their feedback and any further recommendations to improve the report. The report also reflects back on the performance across the 8 service areas who provided separate and more detailed analysis of their 2021-22 performance to the Council's Place and Corporate and People Scrutiny Committees in June 2022. Now, I would like to remind members of this committee that this report is based upon the delivery of the Council's Corporate Plan 2017 to 22, and we're still in the progress of delivering against our commitments. These are being carried forward into the new corporate plan, which you will all have seen at the last Scrutiny Committee. And colleagues, as you'll be aware, at the start of the corporate plan in 2017, we set out a mission to improve people's lives across our communities in Newport. And to support this mission, we set 4 wellbeing objectives: to improve skills, educational outcomes and employment opportunities, to promote economic growth and regeneration whilst protecting the environment, to enable people to be healthy, independent and resilient, and to build cohesive and sustainable communities. In 2021-22, these objectives remained our core priorities as a council. However, when we look back at 21-22, the COVID pandemic and associated restrictions remained prevalent for the majority of the year and continued to impact the delivery of the council's services. It also impacted on Newport's communities and our businesses. We'll continue to see the consequences of the pandemic on Newport's communities over the next 5 years as health services work through the backlog of patients. Of course, this has an impact on our adult services, our communities and educational services. In addition to this, the cost of living crisis will have a significant impact with our most vulnerable and disadvantaged households in Newport over the 18 months. Our housing and homelessness teams have seen unprecedented numbers of families needing secure and safe accommodation, families having to decide between paying their bills, energy and food, and businesses in Newport having to pass on their increased costs to our residents. All of these, Chair, are unprecedented challenges that we are facing as a council, meaning that we are having to make difficult decisions within increasing costs on the delivery of our services. Despite all of this, the officers and the senior leadership team in Newport Council throughout the last financial year have continued to go above and beyond to deliver major projects, support our most vulnerable residents, and to innovate in how we deliver our services. In the last year, we've seen major projects in the city centre complete and open to the public, including the indoor market, Charters Tower and the Market Arcade. We also announced the Knowledge Quarter development, which will rejuvenate the area, providing a leisure centre for our residents and a new college for college friends. We commenced work on the centre at the Transporter Bridge, which will support Newport's tourism and regeneration, preserving our heritage. We've continued to be involved with the Cardiff Capital Region, Burns Delivery Unit and Western Gateway. And all of this is enabling Newport to attract large economic regeneration and also providing new opportunities for residents to reskill, train and find new employment. For example, we've had close involvement in many schemes such as Newport Youth Academy and the DWP Restart programme. We've also seen major investment in our school estate, with projects such as Basic Comprehensive Development commencing and a scholar in Durham. Last year, we also committed through our Climate Change Action Plan to become a net zero council by 2030, and we launched our Climate Change Plan. This plan will be one of the key drivers to deliver organisational changes in how we deliver our services, use our assets, and enable other organisations, citizens and businesses to also reduce their carbon emissions. With the Ukraine crisis, all of our key frontline services have been working together with our partner agencies, families and sponsors to ensure their safe arrival and settling into Newport. I've been so pleased and so very proud to see Newport's residents contribute towards this cause, and we will continue to contribute towards this effort. And Chair, myself and the officers welcome questions from the committee, and I'd be happy to give an overview of any of the key points in relation to wellbeing objectives if required. So
Thank you.
Pass it to you, Chair.
There's nobody? Good.
Thank you, Chair. So if I move on to wellbeing objective 1, I'll cover both 1 and 2 with 4 jumping in on 1 and 2 for some of those particular items. But we start with wellbeing objective 1, which is focused on skills, educational outcomes and employment opportunities. So I think overall the report is quite a significant report for the authority, and at an overall level sets out very clearly the amount that has actually been achieved by the authority given the pandemic.
Excuse me a second. You're very polite to talk to me, but I think you need to talk more to the camera. I don't think they can hear you.
Thank you, Chair. No problem. That's fine. I'll talk this way and raise my voice a little bit louder. And if anybody can't hear, please do say. So I think, just sort of repeating that, I think the report overall sets out the significant level of activity that's been achieved and the outcomes that have been achieved over the 5 years of the corporate plan overall, and particularly I think given the onset of the pandemic in 2020, I think it's quite remarkable some of the achievements, but notwithstanding, we always reflect in a self-assessment way in this latest year the challenges as well as the opportunities that we have as an authority and what we've achieved. So as I said, I'll cover objective 1 initially, and then when we move on to objective 2, myself and Paul Jones will cover objective 2. So the first one, improving skills, educational outcomes and employment opportunities. So I think, I started by mentioning the COVID pandemic, and probably schools were one of the most, the most badly hit as a result of the pandemic, with children having to leave school and blended learning continuing into 21-22. Despite that, I think, Performance monitoring, obviously, as it says within the report, has been, Welsh Government removed performance monitoring as we normally monitor performance across our educational settlements. So that's not been covered in the report. But despite that, outturns in terms of GCSE and A-level results were still positive across the city. Another positive, obviously, we continued as the council to support free school meals with supermarket vouchers, etc. during the year, and that's now at primary school level, rolling out to all primary schools. And I think one of the really sort of significant successes was in relation to the amount of IT provision and EdTech kit that the council afforded to schools. So I think, you know, if we look at the figures that are in the report, there's about 9,000 pieces of digital infrastructure that we circulated to young people. The Band C programme continues apace, and obviously Gwentley, capacity at Ysgol Brynderw and £31 million Basing-led project is in train. However, some of the challenges, you know, attendance figures across primary and secondary schools have fallen since pre-COVID levels, so education welfare officers and a newly appointed inclusion team are working very closely with schools to try and improve attendance and support pupils' well-being as they return to school. The council has also agreed its Welsh Educational Strategic Plan, which sets out the council's programme for establishing and growing Welsh medium education across the city. We've also, at a macro level, the council's worked very well with partners in delivering a broader work and skills agenda, job fairs, supporting new businesses with the recruitment drives. I think that's it, Chair, from a sort of, you know, highlights performance perspective. You'll see within the report, you know, those not in education, training, employment, Newport's been very successful over the last 10 to 12 years in driving those figures down. Unfortunately, again, you know, I think as a result of the pandemic, and we see it's a pattern we see across Wales and wider across the UK, that figure is one of the red areas that we'll be focusing on certainly in this financial year and on into the next corporate plan. But yeah, overall performance, I think there's a lot of, you know, we are showing more greens as far as this particular objective is concerned than reds, and lots of key highlights, I think, for the committee to note.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, coming on next.
Sorry, Chair, I think Paul's going, when I talk about objective 2, Paul's going to speak and jump in on that one. So the education one, open to questions now and commentary.
We agreed to take these questions at the end.
Oh, sorry, Chair. Okay, so moving on to economic growth and regeneration. So again, you know, some challenges that we have to face, and I think when myself and the officer team were here updating committee on the next corporate plan, you know, we had quite a lengthy conversation about economic development, and you know, I think we noted, I think it was Councillor Horton actually said that there are no silver bullets given the national economic crisis that we're currently facing, and you know, the global crisis of the war in Ukraine and the recovery effort after the pandemic. So there are no silver bullets, but I think again some of the key highlights in the annual report signify the level of work that's gone on by Newport City Council and its partners in continuing the trajectory of economic growth. So lots of sort of success stories within the city centre, a number of key projects, broadening that more into the sort of wider environmental developments. The road to nowhere has now become the road to nature. We've seen significant expansion opportunities being maximised out at Imperial Park through the compound semiconductor cluster, and we're also working very closely with Cardiff Capital Region, Western Gateway, and also the Burns Delivery Unit in terms of delivering some of the recommendations of the Burns report. In 2021, obviously the council agreed to renew the local development plan, so that specific piece of policy work, you know, and I know that's not a small piece of work to renew local development plans, that's already in train. So as I said, like education, there are challenges. We've had some challenges, particularly in the planning team in the last 18 months. Again, not unique to Newport, but I'm pleased to report that those members of staff are now in situ, and we're also working through graduate programmes in terms of growing our own. So some very creative and sort of successful recruitment programmes there, managed to attract and retain some talent within that team. So I don't intend going through each and every highlight or each and every performance measure that's in the report. I'm assuming that the committee members have all read the information in front of them. So happy to take questions, Chair.
Sorry, we're going to take the questions at the end of everyone's report.
At the end of the report. Chair.
We just need to add a little bit on objective 2. So I suppose the highlights from area was the progress on climate change. Really, the council declared climate and nature emergency at the back end of this period, and we retained our spot as the best performing city for recycling. We also piloted the Welsh Government Local Area Energy Plan, which has been to this scrutiny committee, which is, it's a work in progress, but it's a really good and interesting start for us. Highways remain challenging and will be challenging going forward, but we've seen significant investment in our active travel projects, and those have been really well received. Particularly proud that we have now got our fleet up to 20% electric, which has been challenging for the council, but it was ahead of most councils. We had the first electric refuse truck in Wales, and also we've done a number of innovative projects working with the community. So Bev mentioned the Road to Nowhere, which has been a blight for the last decade. And it's not so much that we've managed to clear up and we managed to prosecute individuals, as the fact that the community have taken ownership and done some really exciting work there. Similarly, we've done quite a lot of community-based street art projects, which have helped with some of the graffiti and improve some areas as well. So those are just a few highlights, but big questions at the end.
Ms Jenkins?
Okay. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. So I'm just going to talk very briefly about Wellbeing Objectives 3, which is enabling people to be healthy, independent and resilient. And in essence, this objective covers off social care for adults and children living in our city, prevention work, but also some of the work that we've done in terms of reliance on cars and improving air quality. And for that element, I'm going to hand back to Paul, thankfully. And so just obviously members will be aware that over this period, the pandemic has continued to resound in terms of the services that we're able to offer across children and adults, and has been the defining element really throughout 21-22, even as we come hopefully towards the end of some of the more severe impacts of the pandemic. Adults and children have continued to deliver services throughout. Services have never stopped, they've never hesitated. We've continued to work in the community, in people's homes, and of course to deliver our own children's and adults residential care throughout this period. I think for children's, the emphasis has absolutely, as always, been on supporting our most vulnerable children, young people and families. And staff have really responded in some innovative and creative ways to actually embracing hybrid working and make that a positive when working with children and families. I think what we have seen in children's services and indeed in adult services is an increase in both numbers and complexity of referral, and that obviously is some of the outcome of the pandemic period in terms of children and families. Despite that, the total number of children looked after by the council numbers remain stable, and actually the numbers of children on the Child Protection Register has only increased very slightly. We received positive feedback in respect of adult and children's social care from Care Inspectorate of Wales in May 2021 as part of their round of national assurance checks to all local authorities. Over this period, we've also continued to grow both our foster care and our residential care. So with foster care, some members may have seen on social media, we have been very active participants in Wedi Cymru, Foster Wales, and that's been a real positive for us in being able to continue to support and grow foster carers. And in relation to residential care, we have continued to grow our own residential provision for children. We have the largest number of in-house beds of any local authority in Wales, and we are rightly very proud of that. During this period, we opened Rosedale. We are just about to develop annexes on the Rosedale site. And today, in fact, the meeting takes place as the handover meeting for Windmill Farm. So some real steps forward in terms of our own portfolio of residential care. We've also, across children and adults, supported the settlement of Ukrainian families in Newport. And in children's services, we've led for the region in terms of support for unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. These children who largely arrive on the south coast by small boat. And we've developed some really positive and proactive services for that group of children. And our influence in terms of how we do that work has now gone beyond the region and is being seen nationally. In terms of adult services, I think what we've continued to do is really drive our independent living strategy. What we absolutely want to do is to support adults, be they adults with a learning disability, a physical disability, or frail and elderly, to remain in their own homes, to be safe, secure and cared for wherever possible in their own homes. And so one of our most recent developments has been in St Julian's with some specific accommodation for adults with a learning disability, which again is to be welcomed in terms of the support for that group of adults. In adult services, at the end of 2021-22, the number of people with a caring support plan, which is the statutory framework for support, was at 1,940, which is up from 1,861 at the end of 2021. And I would stress that those are the adults most in need of support. So those are adults with significant care needs. I'm sure members will be aware that throughout this period in children and adults, but most acutely in adults, we have seen huge issues in terms of staffing and in terms of being able to recruit and retain the workforce across the whole of the portfolio of social services. And that is impacting on services. It has done throughout 21-22 and continues to do so. Nonetheless, we've expanded our outreach service for carers, and we've also worked regionally as the lead for the Home First service, which is to really emphasise positive discharge from hospital pathway. And we've also continued to work with our colleagues in Welsh Ambulance Service to really ensure that wherever possible we keep people at home safely rather than admitting them to hospital. So I think that's just a kind of bit of a fly over social services. I will be back to present to you in more detail the social services annual report as required under statutory obligations. So I'm going to hand over quickly to Paul just for an update in relation to air quality. Thank you.
So just picking up a quick couple of points. Obviously, we discussed electric vehicles and the expansion of active travel in the previous measure, but there's obviously a clear overlap into this. It's worth mentioning that in addition to our fleet, we've run a number of projects to support external providers, such as helping fund the conversion of some of the buses to electric buses, and also a taxi initiative of Try Before You Buy, which allows taxi drivers to try see if they can make electric vehicles work before they invest in them for the future. Our air quality action plans on track for 2022, that's something else, isn't it? And so we publish our regular action plans, and we've seen good progress on that. I think obviously the switch to electric vehicles is having a small impact, as are some of the other behavioural changes that we've been supporting. I think that's really it in terms of what we put that way. So I don't know, I want to hand on to Reece coming well-being for.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Cole.
Thanks very much, Chair. So this wellbeing objective 4 is to build keys in sustainable communities. So there's a focus within this wellbeing objective around our communities, housing and support, particularly around vulnerable people and disadvantaged communities. So it covers a range of different areas from community cohesion, youth justice services, licensing, training standards, some broader community safety aspects, housing, Welsh language, library provision, and participation and engagement activities within that. So I'm just going to pick up a couple of highlights. I won't spend too long going through this. So there are a series of performance measures in there which are primarily green, but there are a few ambers and reds with the explanations in there. Just to say, obviously, that's gone through the relevant scrutiny committees when the performance reporting went through in June. So again, no plan to spend a lot of time talking about that. Just a couple of highlights from within the report. So the first one is about utilisation of social housing grants. So 16.5 million pounds with investment through that in housing developments across the city. Sally's previously mentioned the situation in Ukraine, staff and partner organisations in Newport and our communities went over and above to ensure that Newport was able to welcome a series of families into sponsored homes across Newport and support that required. Newport has got the fastest growing population in Wales, 10% population increase over the last 10 years, so that very much impacts on this period of time over the 5 years and over the last year of this plan. Sorry, just carry on with that. So community cohesion work, which is highlighted in the report. So that is a regional piece of work that we run on behalf of Newport and Monmouthshire, and that is very much focused on engagement with our communities and support for our communities, but also delivering on the prevent the gender as part of the 4 strands of the counter-terrorism strategy, which is very much around preventative aspects. So a lot of this work within this wellbeing objective is around prevention. Youth Justice Service will work very, very closely as part of community safety arrangements within Newport. I've run a range of operations and activities to ensure young people do not get engaged in criminality at whatever level. So there's some information here around Operation Ashton, which is about identifying this. Some work there about positive patrols, working with volunteers and support workers to engage with young people across the city, etc. Licensing and the work that they do around operations to ensure that there's some information about Operation Bang and illegal fireworks, but also around the illegal sale of tobacco, alcohol, etc. So those operations run on a regular basis. One was run last week, for instance, which had some positive results associated with that. One of the objectives within the 5-year corporate plan was about creating a Newport Intelligence Hub, and that has been instrumental in creating the safety and anti-social behaviour data dashboard. So quite a lot of the work we do around community safety work is very much embedded in data analysis and ensuring that resources can be deployed in the right way. We use some quite impressive technical solutions to that to ensure that partners, a wide range of partners, can access that information and ensure that our resources are being pulled together. Welsh language standards, which is a statutory responsibility of the local authority. So we have a series of standards that we have to work towards. We continue to deliver that across the city as an organisation. We've recently done a Welsh language annual report, which is part of that process. We've got a 5-year promotional strategy, which sets out the vision for Welsh language within Newport, and also Welsh Education Strategic Plan, which is a 10-year plan developed by Education, signed off by Welsh Government around promotion of Welsh language. Some points there around the library service, which has obviously been impacted quite significantly during COVID, which this report looks back on that period of time, but also highlights the work that was done to ensure that those provisions were still in place. Part strictly budgeted, which has been reported elsewhere, but that project managed to provide funding to 80 community organisations to ensure that work could be undertaken in those communities to support them with the COVID recovery. Happy to take questions. I think this is the end of what we can say.
Okay, thank you very much. No other officers, Ms. McKim?
No, here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, open questions now then, please. If you could put your questions to the Chief Executive, and she will decide which officer is most appropriate to answer the question. And obviously, even if you want to come in and tell you time. Okay, yeah, I've got Councillor Alan Waving first. I've got Councillor James. You've got your hand up twice. If it's 2 separate points, fine. Councillor Alan Waving.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. This committee member say thank you, Chair. Yes. Wish to comment on the wellbeing objective 2. It's such a big report, and you can ask so many questions, but I'm going just to ask about this one for the time being. Chair, yeah. I can't fail to see, Chair, first of all, we've said it many times before, and I'm still of the opinion that, we've really grateful where we are after that pandemic. So, whatever I say, have not forgotten really the effect of the pandemic, and that we had to do lots of things really, lots of various things to contain it and to keep living as normally as possible for us and for our residents. So, that goes without saying. But I'm still feel like, we've got so many challenges in our city. I'm not proud really still walking through Newport and seeing all those shops closed. And I think the measure, I know people are going to tell me this is general, this is not just Newport. Yeah, absolutely right. I've been in other parts of the country and I've seen other cities and I've seen the issues. Newport stands out because there's so many of them. And although there are, green shoots of recovery, as it were, new businesses open here and there, which are really greatly welcome. And there are things we have done and they have come to fruition. I think the market has been amazing. And I think a lot of people tell me that. And that was a success so far. And let's hope it continues to be that. But there are issues here. What I was going to comment on is that really when we have a cost of living crisis, jobs become so important. We've commented on that before. I've commented on that before. So I look at that section there, and there is a reference, and it's really very brief reference to things that I think are possibly major for us. So when I read, about the major external investment into the city from Microsoft, Vantage Data Center, IQE Limited, etc. Tiny Rubble, which we can all see and feel, and therefore we know what it can do, Celtic Manners, etc. And then I go down the report and I only see a brief paragraph about that. I think somewhere, some commentary as middle of that page. Newport Council has continued to be a key partner in the Cardiff Capital Region, Burns Delivery Unit, etc. there. It mentioned SPTS. So far, all the information I get about these things come from the press. I have to say that Wales Online and South Wales Argus is where I get some information about these things happening, like the SPTS at the Cold Road, just off sort of in Ringland, really, isn't it? I think a report like that need to have a little more details, more beef really, about what are we getting from, for example, the Cardiff City region. And I know someone is going to say to me, oh, they publish the minutes, read the minutes. That's not the point. I think citizens of a Newport need to know precisely what council is getting from that partnership. I'm not decrying the partnership. I want to know what we are getting from it. If we come to the IQE, colleagues, I don't know, you may know more than I do, but it's a mystery to me. I really don't know the progress they have achieved in Newport, the products they're selling, anything at all, the jobs that, Newport people are getting in there. I don't know anything about that. So I think a report like that ought to give some details about that. And similarly with the Cardiff City regions, really, we contribute a lot of money annually to them. We go back to that plan, £1.2 billion over 10 or 20 years, I can't remember now. But what are we getting from that partnership? Because when you look at the congestion in Newport, it is still there. So, there's been the Burns report, the implementation unit, exactly what is happening. What is Newport getting from that? What about the economic impact of all that? I think all that is needed. And a report like that ought to give more details really about, what we're contributing and what we are getting out of it, Chair. Whatever I'm saying here, you know, is critically friendly, right? I'm not being just critical for the sake of it. I think if I don't know enough about that, then I think my president don't know enough about that. The other issue is as well, Chair. I mean, I know, you know, we Debenhams were the anchor store in Fry's Walk. They left more than 18 months ago now. I know we can say, you know, Fry's Walk is a commercial organization. What they do is up to them. But I think the council does need, there is a requirement on the council to be proactive here. You know, we need to do things. We need to try and, you know, play a bigger role here in trying to, you know, make our city centre more prosperous than it is, you know, to visitors, to shoppers, to its residents. It does look shabby, Chair. I'm sorry to say it, I represent it, but it does look shabby. And we need to do a little bit more than that for it. But this report ought to say, you know, what we are getting from things like that. Nesperia is another one. I think it's a successful story. I think Nesperia is a success story. But amongst the press, sorry, Chair, if I mean, am I okay to continue?
Of course you are, Councillor.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're covering rather a wide number of issues, so it's going to be very difficult to formulate.
Okay, well, I'll stop.
Question.
I'll stop then, and perhaps we'll have some answers. Thank you.
Thank you. The leader has indicated that she'd like to comment on your intervention. Over to you, Leader.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Amy, for your comments and your questions there.
You're welcome.
It's always positive, isn't it, to have such a constructive debate. So, firstly, in relation to this particular report, Chair, obviously this is an overview, it's a reflection on performance as a whole across the entire local authority over the past year. So in terms of just the breadth and depth of this report, obviously it is reporting back on a range of objectives, and that's why I think the information is presented in the way that it is. Now, turning specifically to some of Councillor Alnamani's queries, in relation to Cardiff Capital Region, absolutely right, Councillor Alnamani, and it was very pleasing to hear you say and acknowledge that all of this information is available in the public domain for people to look at should they so wish. But I have to say, Cardiff Capital Region actually do a lot of promotional activity in and around the region and internationally as well. So there's quite a considerable amount of information available in relation to the work they do. Moving specifically to the investment, which was over £30 million, the first significant investment of its nature by CCR into IQE here in Newport, that's actually been incredibly successful, and the cluster that is developing here in Newport is actually is becoming a global leader, and it's important to recognise that. It will deliver and is in the process of delivering good quality jobs and good quality opportunities for people going forward. And you only have to look at the recent ceremony that took place at the new SPTS site to see that organisations are committed to growing that industry here in Newport. And I was particularly pleased to see the SPTS expansion covered, because actually not only does that increase the number of jobs, it's recognition of the cluster and the knowledge and expertise that is being developed here in the region. Now, in terms of the information that may be provided around that, I think there are a number of ways for elected members to access information, and we can do that, I think, as passive recipients of information, or we can actively seek out information that may help us to discharge our duties and our responsibilities to our communities. Something that's been very successful in terms of passing information on
is actually the residents' newsletter, and I know that a significant number of our residents are signed up to that newsletter, and that's where much of this information is communicated to residents on a regular basis. And of course, Councillor Alnamani, we do have a range of other committees and structures in place in Newport, where we are able to pass on information, and colleagues are able to scrutinise in detail the activities that are going on, particularly in relation to economic development here in the city. So I think in terms of our regional partnerships, there is a strong evidence base there, and the information is there for people to access. It's also passed on by the City Council. Moving to the city centre, and I recognise that this is a concern for many people across Newport. But I can assure you, Councillor Alnamani, that the officers of the council are really committed to improving the city centre and taking forwards our goals in relation to that. Like everything else, it will take time. And we have to say, as you acknowledged yourself at the start of your commentary, actually one of the most important aspects of this is that we do not forget the impact of the pandemic on this. Now, I'm really pleased to say that both myself and officers meet with Friars Walk, and we meet with other significant investors across the whole of the city. There is ongoing discussion in relation to much of this activity, but I'm sure, as you understand and appreciate, and certainly as we've touched on previously, much of this is commercially sensitive, and commercially sensitive discussions really are limited and private until such time that they can be made public. Chair, I think the Chief Exec might like to add to this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think the leaders quite comprehensively covered a number of the issues, so there's very little I can add other than to give committee assurance from an officer perspective. I think the highlights, the achievements in the report actually exemplify what has been achieved, albeit during a very difficult period. I reflect again on the conversation at the last overviewing committee where, as Councillor Horton said, we've not got a silver bullet. However, officers are working really, really hard to keep the conversations going, whether it's through Burns, Cardiff Capital Region, Western Gateway officials, as well, Councillor Alnamani, Welsh Government, and also the Secretary of State's office, because we do acknowledge it's really important that there has to be focus on the city centre, that that's not, you know, at the end of the day, that's what people see when they come into Newport. As the leader said, a lot of commercially sensitive conversations that are also ongoing. And also some of the bigger projects, the strategic stuff takes a long time to deliver. So the Burns unit obviously is a delivery unit that's been set up, of which we are part of. And some of those recommendations of that report are in the early development stages, and there'll be further information forthcoming next year as the timing is right to share that information. So we need to progress programs of work in a sequential way, and obviously as that work is progressed, then it'll be shared across the council, shared across the committee, and obviously with the people of Newport, more importantly as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
So can I just say, are we happy then to include more information in this report?
Well, we've asked in previous reports that there's less information contained.
I mean, this is the ideal vehicle, isn't it, to say what Newport is benefiting from these associations, isn't it?
Well,
Sure.
Can
I just say, I'm going to be commenting about having too much information. Economic development strategy is one thing. This is a corporate assessment, and I think there's actually too much information here. So any more?
This is an ongoing theme from previous meetings. If you have specific questions, I'm sure that the Chief Executive will be pleased to answer them. But just asking for more information is something the committee hasn't wanted. Okay.
Sorry. No, I want the information, Chair. Sorry, were you asking me?
Well, you made the point about more information being required, and this is a nod to what the committee has asked in previous meetings. They want more succinct information. They don't want reams of data.
Really, I'm asking the people involved in the authorship of the report, whether they were happy, therefore, to include more details. Personally, I feel such details is needed. I will make the point at the end in the recommendations, perhaps, to test how my fellow members here feel about it. Yes, Chair.
Absolutely. Councillor James?
Hi, thank you. So I did put my hand up twice for a reason. The first hand was for wellbeing 3 and the second for wellbeing 4, but I've also got questions on the corporate plan and involvement and engagement, and I don't think we've had any of the officers speak to that yet. Is that coming?
Corporate planning and engagement, yeah, we have.
So,
Yeah.
okay. Great. So shall I just do wellbeing 3 first and then see if other people, like people in the room, have questions?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Okay, great. So on page 22 then, you reference the 11 air quality management areas in Newport. What's not clear from the report, and I know the information is out there, perhaps that is information that could be added, is how many of those are under the jurisdiction of Newport City Council and how many are looked after by Welsh Government. Should we do one question at a time, or shall I just?
Yeah, fine. One question at a time. Who's answered on recent?
Do you want to answer that? Yeah, Councillor, so these are 11 air quality management areas that are our responsibility. So there's some overlapping, obviously, because Welsh Government covers trunk roads, but we can give you the detail on that. The details published in the annual air quality monitoring reports. They don't come to scrutiny, but they are on the website, but we can send that to the committee for the detail.
Great. On the air quality.
On that one,
Oh, the link's on there, is it? Oh, yeah.
So on the air quality progress report then.
The one you may be most interested in is the one that leads through your ward.
Well, there are actually 2 in my ward, but I was just asking a general question. I thought perhaps the report should make clearer where those are and whether or not they're under. Obviously, the ones along the M4 have an overlap with Welsh Government, as just said. On the air quality progress report then, you are right that there is a link there. The latest air quality action plan can be found here. The last one was published in 2020 though, covering the year 2019. So I was just wondering what the delay was there.
2021 is complete. I'll have to find out why it's not on the website. So, but again, I can forward that to the chair.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so you're going to find out the delay on that. It's just quite difficult for me to scrutinise how you're progressing along with these plans if we don't have that in front of us.
So the officer said that the 2021 was complete and he'd find out why it wasn't on the website.
Yeah. Yeah, great. And the 2021? So this 2021 report, is this the one that is published in 2021 but covers 2020?
I believe so, but I'll never check myself because I'm getting confused with it. But yeah, so we do run a year behind because the data gets validated by Welsh Government. So there's a slight lag in the process, but there's definitely one missing from here.
Okay, perfect.
Although when you write it back to the committee, could you ensure that you copy the ones in?
On page 23 then, you mentioned working with closely with the education services in terms of transformation, air quality mitigation, etc. But there's only one sort of example as to how you're doing that. I mean, granted, it's an annual example, Clean Air Day, it's very nice. But are there more examples coming, and what is the follow-up on those interventions been, and how are you measuring the impact of that?
There are a number of interventions. I know a few, but I don't know them all. So some of the local action groups involve the schools, and there's been work, I know particularly in the cleaning school, in terms of what other mitigations can we have where AQMAs are close to schools. But I'd have to get our technical expert to get your full details on that, which I'm happy to provide, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do know that there is further work happening. It's just that it's not in this report. So from a scrutiny committee sort of perspective, it's hard to say how well you're aligning with all of that. On
I think Councillor, probably the point to make is because this is a top level report, some of the other reports that sit below it, it naturally doesn't have the detail, and as the discussion earlier is, it's always a balance between how much to put in the top level report, but take your point, you can answer those.
Okay, thank you. And on the active travel targets then, just that's 23 and 24. Really lovely to see the targets smashed. So congratulations, but how is that usage being measured, and how are you seeking residents' views on that?
So the usage is measured by little trackers, and I don't know how, but they can tell if someone's on a bike or walking, and they're placing this sampled throughout Newport. So hopefully you shouldn't see them, but from time to time we do get requests as to what they are. So that's a standard process for measuring them across Newport. And yes, active travel usage has gone up, I think part due to our interventions, but also we saw a big surge during the pandemic of people actually sort of walking and utilising some routes more often. So what was the second part of the question?
How are you seeking residents' views?
Oh, residents' views, yes. So there's a, I think it's a 3 or a 5 year cycle of what's called our integrated transport network map. So the last one was around about 18 months ago. There's a full consultation on that where residents got to put their suggestions and ideas onto our integrated network map. As then new proposals come forward, specific proposals, then that goes out to wider consultation itself. It's all done through the Commonplace platform, which allows residents to interact a little bit more with that. But again, I'm happy for our colleagues to provide the information on that, because I know that happened before you joined the council.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's everything on Wellbeing 3 for me.
The leader would like to comment on this as well, Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor James, just for awareness, I'm not sure if you are aware, but we've got a really good example of citizen-led engagement in decision-making around active travel routes. The recent installation of lights and the improvements along the Gearfall route, that route was actually suggested through the process that Paul highlights by a member of the public. So I think, and we're keen to continue to work in that way, because obviously it's the routes that people want to use are most important in terms of that modal shift. So, but it's a great example, and if you get a moment, pop up and have a look, because it's really a fantastic piece of work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Evans, Councillor Hall.
Yeah, I've got some just general comments, and in some ways there is far too much information here, because we're only supposed to be looking, as I understand it, the 4 goals and the 20 commitments. You have to get to about page 35 onwards to find out what the actual commitments are. So, for instance, when we've got adult service measures and pure service measures, well, it's pretty irrelevant to what we're supposed to be looking at here, I think, because ultimately it's about those main key objectives. And, you know, all the aims are very admirable, and I can't fault any of them. But if we have to look at the subsection, then we're talking about just phrases like develop sustainable communities, and we've got a whole list of things like that. But the key thing is what we're doing and what we intend to do, and how we intend to monitor everything. But I guess of the 20 commitments, which I think is on page 635, something like that, is it? 33 actually, or 34. The key thing is how many are actually complete and how many of them are ongoing. And while I can understand, say, making the city dementia friendly, you can argue that's complete. I would say a lot of them aren't complete. They are ongoing and need to continue to be ongoing. And I guess what I want to hear is how we are going to continue to go forward to monitor it. Somebody's going to have to tell me what the Heritage and Discovery Centre is, where it is. Heritage Discovery Centre. We make reference to it here. Redeveloped Heritage Discovery Centre. I'm sorry, I've never heard of it. So, can at least just on that point, can somebody tell me what it is?
Chair, to come in and firstly picking up your first point, Councillor Evans, in terms of what's complete and what's in progress. Obviously, the majority are complete, but the remainder that are in progress will be carried forward into the corporate plan. So in terms of the Heritage Discovery Centre, obviously there's the Transporter Bridge Centre, which is to act as the fulcrum of our plans around heritage, which is already in progress. So I think what the intention was in the last 20 commitments, that we build around that and also look at the development, the ongoing development of the Library Museum building. Okay, so it's part of a broader, I think maybe the wording around it is quite specific, isn't it? But it was.
Well, it says, yeah, commitment, the Newport Festival of Democracy and Redeveloped Heritage Discovery Centre represent the city's increasingly vibrant cultural offer, and it says it's complete.
I would reference that as almost complete, because the Festival of Democracy, the heritage trails, everything else that was intended to happen around that has happened. But as committee will be aware, Transporter Bridge Road it's in progress, but obviously the centre's not built.
So the Transporter Bridge is going to be the Heritage Discovery Centre.
The visitor centre that sits alongside it as the fulcrum of it. But I think what the intention would be on a corporate basis is that we build from that, and we build the city's wider heritage and cultural offer, which again was part of the debate with the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And it comes down to capacity, resources at any point in time to develop that offer out, isn't it? But that's the core of it.
But my point really, to be honest quite nicely, is it's not complete because it's ongoing and that work needs to be done. And the important thing to me will be to see what actions are being taken to ensure that the Heritage Discovery Centre is actually opened and we have targets to monitor the progress, which is a sort of generic point of what I'm getting at. Most of the actual commitments themselves, because you know, we say again we're in progress on transforming Newport City Centre, and there's a reference there to Westgate. The Westgate, you know, is ongoing and needs to be done. And you could argue it'll never be complete if you want to continue like that. But I do think it's important that we perhaps look at, as an example, when we talk about city centre, about, you know, key buildings. And while I appreciate that Charterstown looks very good and the indoor market's very good, we need to ensure that, you know, the Admiral building is not vacant. We need to encourage. I was down in Cardiff last week, went down on the train, came up Cardiff station, and didn't recognise it. It's just gone like that. And go in there, offices. Appreciate that they're, you know, they are a city, but we're a city as well. And the stark contrast, which does actually remind me, we've officially seem to open the Devon Place Footbridge in the report, which is providing much improved connection. It hasn't actually opened yet, but it's. But the point is I'm not being pedantic. The point is certain ones will be completed, but the key thing is to ensure that looking forward, what are we going to do? Because that's the important part. What are we going to do about the city centre? What are we going to do? How are we going to monitor it? Are we going to set targets like percentage of empty shops, for instance, in empty properties? I think we managed to renovate 3. Again, city centre generally, those are the issues I'm more concerned about, ensuring before we go forward. Same facility grants will have a huge impact on bed blocking, and again, to me, that's the sort of focus we've got. 171 days to 381 days. That is an issue which will affect not just the care homes, but hospitals and whole. whole of the city really. So I think, you know, those are sort of general points, which I hope I take for a read.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. The leader,
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Evans. You make some really important points there, Councillor Evans, and certainly in my view anyway. And I think that it's really interesting, isn't it, when we come to look at this report on our performance against the corporate plan, because at this point in the cycle, we're sort of reflecting back, but we are curious about what we do going forward. And so really, we're kind of straddling the closure on this one, and how do those aspects that continue onwards, how do we ensure that they're fed into the new corporate plan? And I think certainly from those colleagues who've scrutinised the draft corporate plan going forward, you can see that there are clear commitments in there to continuation of some of these aspects. And of course, as you rightly point out, and other colleagues have pointed out, certainly officers have observed that some of these factors are beyond our control. So we do have to take into account external factors. But I can provide you, I can definitely provide you with an assurance that our commitment is.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
My computer decided I was going to do an update. Tech boys are doing really well today. Luckily, I wrote the questions down, so that's good. It's two easy ones, really. The grants which were awarded, I think on page 14, paragraph 2, 38 businesses were awarded grants from 250k. Of those 38 businesses, how are they performed with these? Do you know?
I don't know what detail
Okay.
available today, but comes over.
But it's obviously, it's been nice to see how that has transitioned, and then if there's some good story, we can take that forward and maybe build those into the plan as well. I know from a session I was at recently where a lot of information was relayed to us. The plan permission has been granted for the city campus. I just wondered what the timeline was, how that's going to progress moving forwards, please. As it's quite important with the strategic development of the city centre.
Okay, do you want to take that one specifically?
I can take the question, so it's something to come up and place in corporate rather than again here. But the next step within that timeline will be the agreement police with Colin Went. And as you appreciate, committee, that this is obviously inextricably linked into the development of the leisure centre project as well. So a really complex project. So in terms of a defined timeline, Paul, I'm not sure if you've got a date in terms of, I know the agreement police, we are pushing to try and get that signed within the next 2 months. Hence the need to progress the planning application. I don't know if you've got any sort of
I think
indicative timeframes.
Yeah, I think that's where we are. The police is the key point that allows Colin to put in their wider MIM application, which is to fund that. So it's progressing, and there's regular meetings between yourself, Colin. I can't give you a time frame at the moment. There's too many moving balls. It's a challenge, but it is a priority for the council this week.
Because it is solitary, it is also reliant on, as Paul was saying, the MIM funding from the Welsh Government. So planning application triggers the agreement police. The agreement police will trigger the next stage of conversations with the Welsh Government. So yeah, it's quite complex to be running the two side by side, but progress is being made.
But obviously that key piece will then assist the rejuvenation of the centre. It's not quite the silver arrow, silver bullet, silver lining, call it what you will. However, it's one of those small 1% which will make a quite significant difference, I think.
If I might, will this be another 250 at least?
I don't know the detail, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else indicate that they'd like to ask a question?
I think Councillor James had further points on objective 4.
Councillor James?
For some reason, I wasn't able to turn my camera on then. Yes, I do. I might ask them all at once because that actually seems like an easier format from observing everyone else. So looking specifically at pages 29 and 31, if it helps, on empty homes being brought back into public use, the target is exceeded, but the target for 21-22 was just 1.52%, and the council brought 2.02% back into public use. The thing I don't like about percentages is they often don't provide context. So what I would like to further information on is how many empty private homes there were and how many were actually successfully brought back into public use. Moving on to the homelessness prevention targets, it's disappointing that that hasn't been met. Am I on page 51? Yeah, so the target was 50%. We actually prevented 40.1% of households who were at risk from becoming homeless in 21 to 22. Why is the target, obviously I wasn't here when the targets were set, so I'm just wondering why the target is 50% and sort of not 100% really. How are you defining hidden homeless? You talk about the cohort of hidden homeless. In your explanation, you reference the pandemic, so I'd like to know what specific impact the pandemic had in the year 2021 to 22. And again, percentage context, so how many of these households were at risk of homelessness, how many were prevented, and how many were not prevented from becoming homeless as well?
I must confess, Councillor James, I find the figures very low because I look at my own ward and the amount of success we've had in getting homeless people off the streets and out of the vulnerable category has been quite exceptional. So, but I leave it to the officers to give you specific answers.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor James. I can give you some helpful feedback, I think, on some of your comments in relation to homelessness. Certainly, reflecting back on the pandemic itself, so obviously the legislation changed very rapidly and at that time, and rightly so. And I think, as the Chair says, we should be really pleased with some of the successes we've had in terms of providing emergency accommodation. Right at the start of the pandemic, it was a real challenge for some of our most vulnerable citizens, in terms of getting them inside and keeping them safe. So really credit where credit is due to our officer teams. They were amazing in doing that. But actually what we see now and what is impacting on this as well is a combination of a range of factors. So we have, during the pandemic, one of the things that we started to see was where perhaps there were tensions within families or within households, and the impact of people having to stay together inside actually exacerbated some of those tensions. So when we talk about people who are hidden homeless, actually there were a lot of households on the edge, if you like, where people have their relationships have broken down and people have become homeless. In addition to that, and I think this is really important, there's some legislation which is being implemented next month, which has impacted on the private rented sector. And in Newport, we've got quite a significant private rented sector in terms of the housing system that's available to us. And what we've seen is a significant increase, not just in Newport, but across the whole of Wales, private sector landlords choosing to serve eviction notices. Now the moratorium on evictions has been released by Welsh Government. Now we're seeing private landlords, I think, driven by the prospect of new legislation, the impact of greater regulation, and of course the increases in property values. A number of private landlords we're seeing across the whole of Wales are choosing to remove themselves from the market, and this is also impacting on our ability to access accommodation for people who find themselves in statutory homeless situations. So it really is a combination, quite complex factors, and I think that we've done particularly well, or the officers have done particularly well, given the significant increase in the number of homeless presentations that they've had to deal with. And I think because of the way that we monitor this performance, as you rightly observed, that's not actually, it's not reflected here, but in order to drill down into the detail in relation to that, obviously more of that detail will be presented to the scrutiny committee, the performance scrutiny committee that looks at that as well. But I just want to give you the assurance in relation to that. Around some of the reasons why this has increased to this extent, because it is unprecedented. It really is. And from additionally, I think further changes that Welsh Government are making to legislation will also put additional pressure on the service going forward, and that's something for us all to be mindful of. I'd suggest, because most recently, in fact yesterday, the legislation was changed again, and additional priority needs category was added. And whilst we're all committed, I think we, regardless of any political ideology, we'd all be committed to try to do the best that we can. We must recognise that that does put additional pressure on the services as well. But yeah, certainly during the pandemic, there were the government requirements that we needed to meet, but also I think the nature of that relationship breakdown is only now starting to emerge as we're seeing more households split up and more people become homeless. But actually, we're seeing that as well through our social services, particularly children's services, and we're seeing the impact of referrals there, a massive increase in referrals too. So I think this is we talk about sometimes the economic aftershock of the pandemic, but this is about the social impact and will continue to impact on us for many years to come.
Okay, thank you. This is looking forward. Do we have any specific answers to Councillor Green's question looking backwards?
On the certainly on the empty owned property, the percentage does seem low, but it's actually quite. And again, it's not enough context here, is there? But that's a good performance for us, and it's improved quite a lot over the last few years because we've tied down a lot of investment into that. The denominator in that figure, it includes quite a lot of houses that are empty for a purpose. So someone may have died, it's in between condition stuff. So when you're talking around 0.5 to 2%, which is the improvement that we've done over the last few years, that's good. But yeah, I understand as a was indicated, it looks low, but it's not the best performance indicator, I'd say.
Can
I just clarify the point, because I'm under the impression that our actual performance was 3 in number, which compared with 38 in 2017-18 is pretty poor. I think it was on page 31 of my computer. Now, I appreciate that rising costs, but you know, we talk about how they bring down neighbourhoods. We talk about situations where we're desperately shortage of accommodation in certain categories. So, unless I'm mistaken, you know, that needs further explanation. If the costs have gone up, then maybe it's a budgetary thing, but it does seem very low.
You want to cover off this point?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Evans. I think your question is pertinent in terms of the time frame and time cycle for the report that we look at, because we're reflecting back, and we're actually reflecting back on a period where, in terms of priorities for the organisation, actually our priorities were driven by our response to the pandemic, so for the 2-year period. And we can't ignore the fact that that will have impacted on that. But the point that I really like to make in relation to this is we cannot make the assumption that because properties stand empty, they will find a way, and even when they are fit for habitation, or they're passed on into the housing supply system, we cannot make the assumption that they will meet housing need, because we cannot force people in terms of privately owned properties to make them available to people who might need housing. We've actually had a really successful multidisciplinary team that has come together to look at this and look at how the organisation addresses the challenges around this. And I'm really pleased with some of the work they've done, and I'd like to highlight some of the work that they've done actually in the Stonehill ward, because there was, and you'll be aware of the property, I'm sure, there was a very prominent property there that was in very poor condition, and that property is now being sold at auction and is now being redeveloped. But it does take a long time, and it takes a long time, not just because of the experience that we've been doing through in relation to the pandemic, it's also in relation to the legal process that we have to go through as well. But I think we only have to look at the examples of this to see that there is some good work to be done, that we can continue to build on good.
Just come back. I appreciate that, and I appreciate nice situation. But if you look, if you take the sort of broken window syndrome, if you have a house which is derelict, and the terminal tree which look derelict, other people actually living in there, and how quickly they can bring down the neighbourhoods and some of the HMOs which are looking at that. I think we're talking about hundreds of empty properties in. It is in the hundreds, not it's not a low figure. It is in the hundreds. And one suggestion I've made time and time again is, if you're looking at a developer, rather than building affordable housing on a particular site, putting that money towards regeneration derelict properties around the city is a potential way of getting them to do the work and to improve neighbourhoods and bring areas up.
Yeah, I think there are a number of issues with that, aren't there? And, you know, obviously we've got the Welsh Housing Quality Standards that includes social rented housing, so that would be an issue there in relation to that. But I do think it's this relationship, isn't it, between the public and private again, and the powers that are available to us as a public sector body in relation to that. And it's very difficult for us to compel private owners to actually do something. And where we do need to do that, it takes a long time. So yeah. There are measures that we've put in place in relation to council tax and empty properties. And going forward, I'd be keen to see that bringing more of these properties to the board.
I think that this council on data, I think there's just those are just slightly different indicators. So those are the additional over and above. We'll have to get a clarification. I don't think it's absolutely clear on the way it's been written. But those, if you bring back up an empty property in above how many extra ones result. So it's not quite the same as the other indicator, but we'll need to clarify that because I'm not clear myself.
So potentially 3 more than the target of 9.
No, it's not 3 more than the target of 9. It's
There's two different indicators. One is about repurposing for reuse as housing, which is the red indicator. The green, which I think is the one that Councillor James was asking about, we get the figures for that in terms of actual numbers, because Paul said that that will be more than what it looks in terms of the percentage. But just to echo the leader's point, it is really difficult to engage some of these owners, and at the moment we are trying to work as creatively as we can. We've got a task group set up internally. We're also working with RSL partners, and also there's an investment pot that's been set aside as part of the reserves to try and stimulate the development of those empty units. And you know, I would not disagree with the points that Councillor Evans has made before in terms of the the impact that they have on streets across Newport. So you know, it is something we want to do, but leveraging some of those houses, those empty units away from the private owners is quite difficult. So there's a carrot, we also have to look at the stick approach as well.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to inquire on that. In the last council, there was a pot of money set aside for this purpose. And I wonder if we had any examples of that pot of money being used, because it was to be a regenerative pot. In other words, whatever we made out of the housing package that will be reinvested into further updates. Have you got any examples of that yet?
Not today, but again, you can ask the team to provide a further update on that.
Thank you. Right, nobody else seems to be indicating they want to speak. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. Mr. Kim.
Sorry, I'm just conscious there's been a theme running through some of the questions that the committee will deliberate, which is about the amount of information in the report. Some members have said not enough, some have said too much, and so on. There is an inherent tension here that we write the report because we have to, because it's a regulatory report, so there's some things we have to include. We're also critiqued by, obviously, our regulators, Audit Wales, and among others sometimes. There's a requirement now to be self-reflective, so we've talked about how positive we are, but we have to also be critical of ourselves, so we mustn't be too positive. And we're also trying to write a report that says enough for people to care about and engage in. Because if we did the absolute minimum, obviously, we would read it clearly. So it was just to set the kind of processy content behind that.
Thank you. As a committee, we look at this now and we'll put a recommendation. Obviously, if regulation overrules our recommendation, we have to look at the rules. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all for your attention as well. Okay, could I ask that we look at the recommendations to the committee on page 11 and we deal with this point about the amount of information that's being supplied to us. We need to have a verbal update from the end.
Leanne's on Teams, Chair.
You're on Teams, okay. Leanne, please.
Thanks, Chair. Can you hear me?
Try again.
Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, we can hear you, Leanne.
Yeah.
Would you rather I come into the room? I'm literally outside, so if you want me to come into the room to know, that would be helpful.
I think that would be helpful.
Yes, please.
Yeah, the internet's not great on what side of the building.
Yeah, I was saying they have an IT update at the moment.
No, mine was just doing this. Well, mine just did an update.
Oh. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to update the committee on the proposal for the annual report. So each year we would prepare a report that summarises the work of the committee and take that forward to council. What I would propose is that I send out the report electronically, so send that to you via email, secure your comments via email, and then those will be captured as part of the final document going to council in November.
Okay. Just to stress that you will be commenting on previous year's work and not the forward stuff that we've been looking at during the course of this year. Okay. Everyone happy on that?
So when's it going to council?
I think it's the 22nd of November.
So the turnaround time will be fairly short.
The report would be reading next week.
With a deadline for replies.
It would be about 2 weeks you'd have responses.
Thank you. Okay, you done? Thank you very much. Okay, if we can go back to the conclusions of the committee reports. We've been asked to consider item 1, the council's progress to achieving its mission statement to improve people's lives. Comments on that one, please? No comments?
Sorry, no, wait, the raise hand thing is there, sorry. Just that it's difficult to say without more of the context on the areas I was specifically looking at. I don't think I have enough context to assess.
You're looking at 2017 to 2022, so obviously this predates you coming onto the council, so if you're unable to make a comment, that's fine. But, you know, obviously you'll be far more interested in the answers you get back from today.
Yeah, exactly. You know, that report should, and I'm not the only newly elected councillor on committee today, that report, you know, should give us enough information to make that comment. And, you know, it doesn't. So I think that in order for every member on this committee to do the work that is being asked of them, we really do need that context.
Okay. Thoughts?
But I think, you know, I disagree with Mick about needing further information.
I know we're going to deal with that towards the end there.
Well, why can't we deal with it now? It's on the, we're talking about the same
So we go all over the place. At the end, we'll deal with, do we need more or less information within our reports? And
well, no, this is just about this particular report. It's not about general reports. And this was the point about the fact that we have an economic development plan or strategy, and that information should be in that one, not in the corporate plan. So my points are general when it comes to, you know, how to improve people's lives, the aims of great. A lot of these will be ongoing. A lot of them are going to need further work, and a lot of them will hopefully be incorporated into the current corporate plan to ensure that it is monitored and we can monitor it. But to say something is complete when it hasn't been completed, like the Heritage Centre, which nobody knew anything about, I think just needs to be made aware of that.
right, that's more something for point 2.
So
We're asked to consider, for clarity, we're on page 11, recommendations to the committee. Have we considered the progress towards achieving this mission statement? Yes, we've considered it. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone content that we have considered it. Whether we like it or not is not the answer to this question. Okay. Now, if we want to move on to, if we contempt with question 1, we can go on to question 2, whether the annual report 21-22 gives sufficient information to monitor the achievements of the all well-being goals and 20 commitments. Right? Taking up Councillor James's point, no. She doesn't believe that we have got sufficient information. Councillor Evans, against that.
Well, no, ironically, those are general comments. But actually, when it comes to the actual 4 wellbeing goals and the 20 commitments, which are on about page 35, then no, there isn't sufficient information because those are the critical things.
Okay, that's fine.
So, yeah.
That's fine. Councillor James, I assume you're in accord with that.
Sorry, we're still on mute. Yeah, absolutely on board with that. I think specifically for me, and stop me if I'm getting ahead of myself, the air quality progress reports. So that was a wellbeing section 3. The council hasn't released an update on their progress on air quality since the year 2019. That's the last year that was covered. So actually, for the purposes of this report, I mean, just over half of the period we're being asked to look at has been covered, and we can't possibly scrutinise their work since 2019 when we don't have any of that information.
Okay. Do we have a contra view, or is everyone content that we haven't received sufficient information. Okay. I'm asking the committee clerk, do we need to specify this?
So what I've noted it as is, I led with your point, Councillor Evans, that you feel that there's simultaneously too much information and not enough specific information. What I've noted about the specific information notes the 4 wellbeing goals and the 20 commitments not having enough context behind that. Is that accurate? Would you say? They've noted Councillor James's agreement with that as well.
Yeah, we've got no dissent against that.
Councillor Williams indicated.
You're against that, are you, Councillor Alwyn?
Yeah, yes, Chair, on 2 then. I don't think we've got enough information in this section that I refer to in my question about the the semiconductor plants, IQE, whatever they call themselves there, and I think I made that point very clear that I think really the report ought to contain more information about really what Newport and Newport residents have benefited from these in terms of jobs, employment, that sort of thing. And in terms of the Cardiff City regions, also in terms of the annual financial contribution to the region, as what is Newport as a city has got from that as well. Cardiff can point out to the metro, for example, but what do Newport say have been the benefits? I think that report ought to have some more information on that.
Okay, on that specific point, thank you. Anyone else?
Okay. So just trying to be helpful, Chair. This is probably people confused about the 20 and all the other bits in the report which aren't there. On the actual 20 commitments, when it talks about a thriving city and transforming the city centre, then that's where the information should be removed and put in there, and that's where it should be monitored. We're talking about those 20 commitments.
Okay. Yeah, anyone else on that one? Okay, thank you. Right, have we considered the impacts of COVID-19? Yes, we don't have to determine them, we just have to consider them. Yeah. Okay. Right, item 4, which, if you recall at the beginning, I said I thought was probably the key question. Consideration of the report's self-assessments and the supporting action plan to improve governance and performance. Now, I think Mr. Kim, when she talked to us about the structure of the report, touched on this. But of course, it's for the committee to decide if we've got enough information in the supporting action plan. Anyone, please?
Sorry, which action plan are we talking about?
Page 11, item 4 at the bottom.
No, sorry, on the actual report itself.
Yeah.
No, on the corporate plan. Where's the action?
Consideration of the report's self-assessments, where they've given indication of whether they thought they
and the supporting action plan.
The action plan is page 58, the little number, not the large one, if that makes sense. Page 75 of the actual report pack, 58 of the actual report.
So this is. I think you'll try and find it first.
Chair, can I ask a bit of a philosophical question on that one? Self-assessment then, how is that done? I mean, is scrutiny not part of the self-assessment?
Well, we have been asked to consider now whether their their assessments are reasonable.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, how are we to do this, for example?
Well, it's what we've been specifically asked to consider. How deep you want to go into it? You know, do you want to examine every assessment they've made of their actions?
Yeah, who are they though?
Well, the officers of the council.
Is it the officers? Is it the cabinet?
It's the officers, as far as I understand it.
Well, is that correct? I mean, shouldn't be also the executive?
I don't believe this has been to cabinet.
No, it hasn't been to cabinet yet.
So it hasn't been to cabinet, so they couldn't have determined on it.
Well, it should be the council as a corporate, isn't it? Which is why I raised the question about the scrutiny, you see. I mean,
well, if we say that we're not happy with the officers' assessments, then it will go to cabinet to consider if they need to boost that.
sorry, I mean, I'm just trying to refresh my mind. Is that a section towards the end, the action plan?
Well, it runs up, the assessments run all the way through it.
No, that's specifically
I know.
59.
Yeah.
On pages, well, my 59 to 63.
You're 59 to 63.
I think you've got it in your hand actually, Chair.
I've got 61 in my hand.
Yeah, I've got it on it's pedantic, it's a bit pedantic, but maybe the page numbers have changed in the reports for some bizarre reason. It is a portrait table. Yeah.
75, I think you probably got.
On the left hand side, it was.
Conclusion and action plans for
Yeah.
improvement.
Yeah.
I got it down as page 58, but it's obviously.
There we are. Yes, about right.
Yeah.
It says 58 on the page.
And it's down.
Bizarre.
Close.
But yeah, that's the action plan, that table.
Starting on, does the council service plans to ensure that objectives.
Yeah. I mean, it looks an action plan for improvement, so that's not self-assessment, is it? I don't know that we can answer that question personally, Chair.
It's not really an action plan. It might have, you know, if you just want to take something simple like training the induction for new members will be reviewed and updated. Well, when? Time scales.
So whoever formulated that question for this committee, sorry, Sam, could it be you? I don't know. Scrutiny advisor, what do they have in mind?
Well, looking at the action plans, they're given anticipated completion dates, which are all somewhat in the future. So the only thing we can really say is that we want a further update when they're actually closed out.
I can definitely know that, that's not trouble. I think, Councillor Maloney, correct me if I'm wrong, what you're saying is who is making the self-assessment that we should be judging?
No, he's just asked no. The question we've been asked to consider on page 11, who formulated these questions? Yeah.
Well, I assume the questions on page 11. So the scrutiny report, the cover report that is put before the actual report is written by me, with support from the report writer, just to make sure that we're capturing what you should be looking at, areas of focus that I think you should be looking at, and salient background information. So they will have been agreed as appropriate for the committee. with work done beforehand. I don't
So, you
So-
know, sort of,
So, again, I think this is the key consideration we needed for this morning. And we can't make a determination at this point because we're waiting for the actions to be closed out. And the point that Councillor Evans made, training for new members, they've got till the 31st of March this upcoming year to sort that training out.
But there's no reference also to which areas of members these things go back to. So whether something comes back to this scrutiny forum, whether something comes to Democratic Services Committee, whether it goes to Cabinet, whether it goes to Cabinet members. So there needs to be some accountability additionally on there to say, well, who's responsible, who does it go to, and then who takes responsibility and who monitors it from a member point of view.
Before I call Councillor Baker Westhead in, can I say that I understand it's the Deputy Leader of the Council who is responsible for member development?
So it's a general point on the whole issue there, whoever it is, whether it's a Cabinet member, a scrutiny committee, whether it's Cabinet, whether it's a council.
within the action plan, you mean?
Yeah, who, you know, there must be within that, somebody from a member's point of view, would have to monitor, observe.
Yeah.
So,
Councillor Baker Westhead, come in, please.
Yeah, I might be completely off track with this, but looking at it, we've just been asked to consider things on a more sort of macro level. So if we're looking at how they're getting the, you know, where it's going towards the self-assessment, are we just meant to be looking at it in terms of the fact that there is actually self-assessment in place in the relevant areas for now? And then further down the line, we look at the more micro detail as to who's action in it and whether it's been achieved within those timescales. Is that the question that we're really looking at? The sort of the more of the overview that is actually these plans are in place as they need to be at the outset, and then we scrutinise them further down the line. I'm not sure.
You're right about us looking at the macro level. These won't come back to us again. This will come back next year.
Yeah, he'll come back as another annual report, so you'll have another macro overview.
But not necessarily with any more detail in it, unless we specifically ask for it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I'm just not quite sure how much in depth we're meant to get at this stage. I suppose that. Yeah. Sorry. I'm just trying to get my head around exactly. Yeah. What level we're scrutinising at for this.
If I can, Chair. No, I take your point, Councillor. That's absolutely what Tracy said when she was talking about what level of information to include. Obviously, if they included every report within the corporate annual report that they mentioned, you'd have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages, and it just wouldn't be feasible. I think you are right. We're looking at this at a macro level, but equally, you can certainly ask for more information to be included on certain areas, as councillors already have done. I also think that Councillor Alvin's point is salient as well about whose responsibility it is to monitor this and how it's monitored. Maybe that's something the committee could recommend, to include who is actually monitoring these actions in the action plan. But obviously that's entirely up to yourselves. Obviously all the source reports that are referenced in that action plan will go to the relevant committees for more in-depth look, and then I imagine come back to us next year within the annual report with that more macro look on them.
Well, with due respect to Matt, I would only expect to see them next year with a closed out on it, that they've actually done it. But if you want, and you know, because Councillor Evans particularly talked about new members, appropriate skills, etc. Who's to determine what that is?
No, I was just using an example of something that's not an action plan to me. It's just that training induction will be done and there's an end date. It's not really an action plan to say.
Well,
who goes, who's responsible, what actions are going to be taken to ensure they're done over what particular site, so X, Y. So I was just using that, it could have been any one of those on.
Yes, no, stick with that one.
To make it simple as possible to say, well, is that's not an action plan.
It's marked down to
It'll be reviewed and updated.
It's marked down to law and standards.
Yeah.
And law, in this case, would be the council's chief legal officer, and standard would be the reviewing committee. I only know this because I sat on standards previously. So
I think you find it to go to the Democratic Services Committee.
Well, that's not what it says here.
No,
So it's just a service area.
That's the service area. It'll go to the Democratic Services Committee, which needs to be in there because they monitor and have a cabinet member who will be responsible. So that it just needs, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. Just to say, well, if we're being asked to approve it, well, there's some things they can do just to improve it.
So no, I've noted that there needs to be more inclusion of where reports are actually going to, where you can find them, that kind of thing, more finessing of it.
Come back in, councillor.
Yep, just wondering then, if we're looking at it with a little bit more detail needed, like when other organisations look at action plans like that, they have things like smart, measuring systems, don't they, with specific, measurable, achievable and all the rest of it within those timeframes. So would we be looking at that type of level of information that we're going to need on it?
So that would be the RAG rating system, councillor, is what we have in place. It would be the green, amber, red rating system that they use to measure performance that is included in the report.
No, I think that we're mixing up the RAG system with responsibility. Now, if we were in a private organisation, there would be somebody's name tagged against us, and they would be the person we would come back to and say, have you done this? That's not, I'm afraid, the way that local government works.
Chair, I take it really, rather than the micro level, it's the macro level, because it is about the whole council. Imagine, we have a body of local authorities sort of assessing councils, like they have in education, how they will assess us, and therefore, how will we self-assess ourselves, to those standards. So I think it's not just officers, I think it's officers, I think it's the executive, I think it's the scrutiny process, and I think it's the relationship between all those.
Yeah, absolutely right. And we will be audited by the Senate at some point in the future against KPIs. So back to the question, and we're only asked to consider. Okay. So
the report doesn't have anything on that, does it, Chair? It doesn't have a section on self-assessment.
Well, they are there, and they may be mislabeled.
Self-assessment runs to the right. That would be where performance has been rated with the red, amber and green measures. They're the assessments. And you're right.
Yeah, individually, but I mean, for a report like this, it would need maybe to distill all that, in terms of the council performance, 90% is green, 5% amber, that's and that, talking about the whole council. And it can also talk about the council, achievements, basically, how to improve performance, how the scrutiny process is helping it to achieve that, and so on and so forth, isn't it? I mean, that's what self-assessment is, I think, but, I could be wrong. The only thing is, I haven't found in the report anything that actually talked about self-assessment.
We have
about an action plan for improvement. I saw that, but it didn't say self-assessment.
Right. Keep your powder dry for question 5, which we're coming on to now. We have considered the self-assessment and supported action plan to improve governance and performance. We've considered it, whether we like it or not, it's another matter. Now, item 5, this is where you can provide recommendations on the annual report for the 2021 to Cabinet. So we're going to take it down from us, give it to Cabinet with excuse me, recommendations for improvement. Okay. Short and specific.
That's just what we've been talking about, Chair.
I'm going to send you questions in the order we've been posted.
So I tell you what, if I go through what I've captured so far, and obviously we'll add and chop and change where we need to. I think the main point is about the inclusion of information. In some areas it feels like there's too much information, in others there needs to be more specific information. Councillor James, I take your point about the air quality information needed there, about the empty homes needing more specific data, the numbers rather than just percentages. Bear with me as I scroll through my notes. I think that's the main concern from what I've captured is the level of information. Is there anything else anyone wants to add or to clarify, really?
Sorry, just to clarify, that was from the percentages, that was on empty homes, but it was also on homelessness prevention.
No problem, I'll note that.
But under the general point, don't use percentages unless you provided the
numbers as well.
The numbers, well, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. It could be 100 people that we didn't prevent homelessness for, or it could be 1,000, and there's a big difference in, you know.
Yeah, but would the committee agree that if I put it as a recommendation for all areas rather than just the specific areas, that we include specific data as well as percentages to give more context?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chair, did we accept the point I made about it being a recommendation to Cabinet?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's going from us to Cabinet.
Thank you. Well, yeah, because it's specific. Number 5, isn't it? I think. Are we not doing number 5 now?
Yeah.
Yeah. I meant under that. So
yeah.
You mentioned it was a specific point. So if that was possible, then we can make it a recommendation, perhaps to Cabinet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the only thing we can do with it.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone done? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Over to you, Samantha.
Yes, just me at the end. My section on scrutiny advisory reports. Obviously, there's the action plan and the committee's work programme. The action plan is as stands. I'm still chasing a few bits. Obviously, as and when I get answers, they'll be forwarded to committee. And then the work programme going forward, the only change you'll see here was the annual compliments, comments and complaints report. That no longer comes to us. The legislation has changed and the requirement is that it goes to governance and audit committee instead. But going forward, the work programme is as it is. Happy to take any questions or any comments on that one.
So you're taking both at the same time, the action plan?
And the work programme.
It's just on the action plan, about which committee. When you raise concerns about lack of university students in Newport, that's a concern to be investigated.
We need to put that back to education, really, don't we?
I'll certainly do a bit of.
No.
I mean, without wanting to protract everything, the council gave the university a lot of money in grant funding for buildings. And they've sold off site and got a lot of money from the altering site and the inside. were there any promises there about how many students they were going to keep in Newport? And the money we funded them, not just through council agreement, but also through the urban regeneration company, because the council was a third contributor to that. The urban regeneration also committed money to them, so it was more about that and the lack of students.
Yeah, no, I'll do a bit of digging and I'll
Gareth Price might know about the legal agreements.
yeah, no, I'll certainly see what I can find out for you.
Well, we don't need to think about it. We just send it to the head of legal and see what he's going to say for himself.
By all means. I've made a note of it anyway.
Thank you.
Okay. That concludes the business, I think. Thank you all very much for your, Mick, Dad, you're on mute. You're still on mute.
Keep your up.
Right, so I'll leave you, you're on mute, we haven't heard anything you've said, I think.
I was switching off.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry about that, yeah. Have we clarified how the minutes are to be reported? Are we still with this committee member said this and committee member said that?
Yes, we've agreed that we'll ask the Democratic Services Manager.
Yes, and the head of law and standards.
Yeah,
for more clarification.
we're taking that as an ongoing action.
We staying with that, are we?
No, we're taking it as an ongoing action to determine.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Okay, all. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
It's not recording. Oh.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.